When 4-year-old Josh Thompson began talking to an invisible friend, his parents initially viewed it as a typical phase. That changed when they asked where this new playmate came from. The toddler explained that his friend lived in a little box in the ground at the local park, near a dark brown gravestone. He claimed a bad man had done bad stuff to him. The Thompsons lived a quiet, routine life in Paducah, Kentucky. Jim worked as a contract driver for the Postal Service, and Jan worked full-time for FedEx. Because of their demanding schedules, they relied on a nanny to look after Josh during the day. The nanny, Susie, would often take Josh to a nearby park to give him a chance to play. This particular playground sat right next to a very old cemetery with faded, dark brown markers. It was here that Josh first started talking to an invisible companion he called Man. The park provided a sharp contrast, a bright space for children adjacent to a silent, decaying graveyard. It raises the question of whether a child's imagination is simply at work, or if the proximity to the cemetery provided an opening for something else. Psychologically, imaginary friends are a common coping mechanism for children processing loneliness or absent parents. Josh's descriptions, however, were uncharacteristically specific. He insisted Man was a 6-year-old with blonde hair and blue eyes, and that he was deceased. Soon, the family began noticing strange occurrences within the house. They heard the sound of fingernails raking against the hallway walls at night, and heavy footsteps in the attic. In the bedrooms, mattresses would shake just enough to wake the family from their sleep. While a child's mind can invent a friend to pass the time, it cannot physically vibrate a bed or produce the sound of footsteps in an empty attic. The situation changed when Jan found Josh holding an old vintage photograph. The image, which looked to be from the mid-1900s, showed a stern woman in an old-fashioned dress with a young boy sitting at her feet. Josh claimed Man had handed it to him. Jan placed the photo on the refrigerator, asking every visitor if they recognized the people in the picture. No one in the family or their circle of friends had ever seen the photo before. One day, the photograph simply disappeared from the refrigerator. The family searched the entire house, but it was never found. When asked, Josh said Man had taken it back. The activity grew more overt after a new babysitter took over. She reported hearing a deep voice coming from the playroom while Josh was inside. One afternoon, she opened the door to find Josh's toys suspended in the air before they suddenly hit the floor. She quit immediately. When objects begin to move on their own, the explanation of a simple imaginary friend fails. These events suggested that an external presence was now exerting physical influence over the household. Josh's behavior became increasingly volatile. He grew defiant, using language his parents had never heard from him before. Jan described him as appearing like a shell, as if his normal personality had been displaced. The defiance soon turned toward destruction. Jim once entered Josh's room to find the 4-year-old meticulously cutting his stuffed animals into pieces. A more serious incident occurred when Josh, who had always been fond of animals, was caught trying to smother a kitten under a couch cushion. For every act of aggression, Josh offered the same justification. He said Man told him it was okay, or that Man said it would be fun. By positioning itself as a harmless friend, the presence was able to use the child's innocence as a shield, hiding its influence behind a 4-year-old's trust. To understand what her son was experiencing, Jan decided to stay in Josh's room one night while he slept in her bed. She wanted to feel the presence for herself. Jan was awakened by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. In the darkness, she saw a shadow standing just outside the door. Thinking it was Josh coming back to his room, she reached out for him. A figure stepped into the room, but it bore no resemblance to a child. Jan saw a semi-translucent entity with glowing eyes and jagged, pulsing veins visible beneath its skin. It stood over her, laughing. The image of the traumatized 6-year-old had been a facade. In its place stood something that had used a child's persona to gain an invitation into the Thompson home. Jan contacted Eli Littlebear, a Native American medicine man, for help. He told her she would need to be forceful with her prayers to rid the home of the spirit. The cleansing required a precise ritual. Jan anointed the 4 corners of the property, the driveway, and every door and window with olive oil. Inside, she burned sage and sweetgrass, directing the smoke with a medicine feather to seal the home. The activity stopped immediately and did not return. The family's experience was later featured on the Discovery Channel program A Haunting, under the title Demon Child. While the house was quiet, Jan found the experience had a lasting effect on her. She claimed the encounter left her with heightened clairvoyant abilities, allowing her to hear and see things others could not. It leaves us to wonder if a child's imagination is just for play, or if those moments of make-believe can sometimes draw something out of the dark.